I hope you guys will remember when we were talking about APA format, one of the unique characteristics that separates APA format from MLA format is the inclusion of an abstract. I'm sure that as you have been going through the research process and gathering information that you want to include in your argumentative research paper, you've seen articles that include an abstract at the beginning. So as you can see, an abstract is usually a common convention for academic writing. So what is an abstract? An abstract is basically a summary that gives the reader a gist of the forthcoming report, presentation, article, etc. It's an overview of what's ahead. It's usually written in sciences, social sciences, etc. However, a lot of times in scholarly publication, you'll be asked to write an abstract in the arts and the humanities and things like that. But the key thing that I want you guys to take away, other than that it's kind of an overview or a gist of a longer presentation, is that it's brief. Abstracts are usually no longer than 200 words. And I know you guys are thinking, wow, 100 to 200 words, I can totally do that. However, it's a lot trickier than you think because you have to include a certain amount of information. So being concise in your and economical in your language is really important. So there are three types of abstracts that I want to talk about. The first two are the two that I'm not asking you to write, and then the last one, which is the kind that you will write for this paper. So I know you're asking, well, why are you including the other two if you're not asking me to write the other two? Just because you're not writing an informative or a proposal abstract in this class doesn't mean you won't be asked to do it in another class. So I want to make sure that I give you the information so you have it. So an informative abstract is a paragraph that gives the essence of a paper about a study or research project. And usually that's done in science or medicine, things like that. It usually provides a description of the study, an overview of the methods that are used in the study, a discussion of the results, and any kind of conclusions that they may come up with at the end based on their research. So I want to give a little bit of an example of an informative abstract. And give me just a second. I won't bore you to tears and read the whole thing, but I want to point out the key elements. So remember, you want an informative abstract, you want to give a description of the study. And my first sentence does that. The relationship between boredom, proneness, and health system reporting was examined. That's kind of the essence of my study. Then you want to provide a description of the methods. My methods revolved around testing 200 undergraduate students based on this boredom proneness scale and the Hopkins checklist. So I have all these students completing this checklist. Then you want to discuss your kind of results. Well, it concluded that the covariance of individuals with high boredom proneness total scores reported significantly higher ratings on all 5 subscales of the Hopkins symptoms checklist, etc. And that these results suggest that boredom proneness may be an important element to consider when assessing symptom reporting. They also say at the end that these conclusions that they come up with will be discussed. And I did not write this. It's in your book on page 79 in the abstract section. But this is a good example of an informative abstract because it gives me a brief and concise overview of the research project or study that I have conducted or that this person has conducted. The second type of abstract that you may run into in the future is a proposal. And a proposal is very different than an informative or a description proposal because it's not written to introduce a longer piece. It stands alone because instead of discussing what I did find out, or instead of discussing what conclusions I have reached, the purpose of a proposal is to persuade someone to let you write on a topic or pursue a project or conduct an experiment. You want approval to do something. So for a proposal abstract, and it's kind of like your topic proposal that you guys wrote for me, in some kind of way, because you have to justify what you intend to do. So anyways, it's the thing that you write before you write a larger paper. It's usually written in future tense because it's things that you will do, not things that you have done. And it describes work that you will do if allowed to pursue the project. So I will give you an example of a proposal abstract. And all semester long, I have been reading things that you guys have written, and I am going to share some things that I have written. So I did write this. So this is an example of a proposal abstract. So in further examining the role of deformity in Camilla and Zofloya, two novels that you may or may not be interested in, I intend to focus on historical constructions of the body and disability, including an essay on deformity and excerpts from the Ugly Club. So I'm telling the person that's reading this what I intend to do, what I intend to focus on. I intend to draw from contemporary feminist and disability theory. So this is my process. These are my methods. I mean, what I intend, again, to do is to connect these two texts to open critical conversations about Burney and Dacre within the realm of disability studies. My main critical sources include and a list of the things that I want to consult. And at the end of this proposal, I have attached a working bibliography, and my sources are available through the library. So this is a kind of scaled back version of a proposal, but it's short, it's sweet, it's to the point. It is telling my reader what I intend to do, right? And asking if this is going to be approved or not. So that's the gist of a proposal abstract. So last but not least, this is the kind of abstract that I want you to write. It's a descriptive abstract. It is much briefer than informative abstracts in some ways because you're not describing methods or anything like that. And instead of summarizing the paper, it's more of a teaser. It's a movie trailer. It kind of gives an overview or a glimpse of what the reader will see. It provides a quick overview that invites the reader to read the entire paper, where you don't discuss results. You don't get into the meat and potatoes. It just kind of gives kind of a, like I said, a teaser. So I have an example. And so I showed you guys a proposal of what I intended to do. And now I'm going to show you a descriptive abstract of what I did. So, Liminal Spaces and the Disabled Body explores Edmund Burke's aesthetic paradigms as established in his inquiry into the origin of our notions of the sublime and beautiful to recover what disability meant for an 18th century audience. Ooh, exciting, I know. I examined Burney's Camilla and Eugenia's disability, as well as Dacre's Zofloya and Victoria's figurative hermaphroditism in terms of 18th century views of deformity and physiognomy, to argue that both Eugenia and Victoria's deformities, etc., challenge the prevailing structures of aesthetics and expectations of feminine beauty. my thesis questions, etc., etc. This is kind of an overview of what the paper is about. And I know that you guys aren't interested in reading this because it's like, trust me, it's kind of boring. But there are people who are interested in reading it, and this gives them an overview of what's included in this massive long paper, to kind of give them an idea of whether or not it will be pertinent to them or whether or not it would be worth reading. So this is an example of a descriptive abstract. And this is, like I said, the kind that you will be writing. So what do I need? What are my key features of writing this abstract? And the information that I'm going to give you is the same no matter what kind of abstract you're writing, but I'm specifically going to be talking about descriptive. So what do you need? Basically, the first thing you need is a summary of basic information. Let the reader know kind of what your paper is about. Present information on the contents of your paper. You may or may not want to present the argument that you intend to make, but you certainly want to leave out any personal perspectives on those types of things, because that's what the body of the paper is about. You don't want to, give your own personal opinion or personal viewpoints in this particular place. And last but not least, brevity is one of the key elements of an abstract. Although the lengths of abstracts can vary, usually they are restricted between 120 to 200 words, which means you have to kind of select and edit your words. So it should be short, sweet, and to the point. I have a few tips and tricks for you guys for compiling your abstract. Copy and paste any key statements where you think that you might want to include in your abstract. For example, you may want to highlight your thesis, any basic information, not necessarily for this particular abstract, the methods and results, but highlight your thesis, your conclusions, or any basic info. You want to summarize key ideas. In other words, you want to include information that seems crucial to understanding your work. So if it's not essential to understanding, maybe it doesn't need to find a place in your abstract. Save that for the entirety of the work. The other piece of advice that I want to give you is avoid first person. You want to cover ideas, not say what you personally think or will do. The only time that it's appropriate to use I or any kind of first person pronoun in an abstract or a paper is when it's a proposal, because that's kind of the idea, is this I will do this, right? Instead, if you notice in the other two examples, nowhere in there does it say I, etc. It just talks about the ideas covered in the paper. So kind of keep an eye on that, but summarize key ideas. And then, like I said, when I was talking about brevity, you want to conform to any length requirement. So depending on the type of abstract that you are writing, some can be longer than 200 words, but for the particular kind of components for this assignment, I do not want anything longer than 200 words for your particular abstract. So keep that in mind. My piece of advice to you guys is don't start with writing your abstract. Wait until you reach the end of your paper to write your abstract, because a lot of times you don't know what you're going to write until it's actually written. So the best time is to not really start with the abstract, but to save that till the very end. And if you really kind of want to look at what what I always think is a good way to start is to look at what you say in your introduction, and then look at what you say in your conclusion and try to find a way to weave those two parts of your essay together. So I have an example of a paper that, or an abstract that a student wrote a number of semesters ago on surgical castration. And I know I never, it was probably, I don't want to say it's the weirdest paper that I've ever read, but it's certainly up there as one of the kind of weirder ones that I read. But she did a decent job writing an abstract. So she talks about the kind of topic of her paper. um, she talks about kind of the controversial issues of the difference between chemical and surgical castration. And then she goes on to talk about the different things that she kind of outlines in her paper about the recommended candidates and requirements that must be met. Anyways, I'll let you guys read this yourself, but she gives an overview of her paper, and she doesn't really give anything away, but she does kind of give, like I said, an overview of what her paper is about. This is one of many ways to look at how to write an abstract, a descriptive abstract. So take everything that I've said and kind of do your best, whichever way you think works well for you. There's more than one way to skin a cat, just like there's more than one way to write a good abstract for a paper. But just keep in mind the things that you need for a descriptive abstract versus an informative or proposal abstract. So that's all I have for you guys in this little lecture. Please let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or if you want me to look at anything for you all. But until then, I bid you adieu and happy abstract writing.